A brutal ambush, shattered lives, and a quest for justice that still echoes today. On the morning of June 26, 1975, two FBI agents, Jack Coler and Ronald Williams, were stationed in the quiet yet tense Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, tasked with executing a routine arrest warrant. What they couldn't know was that this seemingly ordinary day would be their last. Within hours, both agents were dead, victims of a violent ambush. The question that loomed large was, who was behind this brutal act, and why? As investigators delved into the crime, they discovered a web of tension, political unrest, and deep-seated divisions between the American Indian Movement, AIM, and the local tribal leadership. The truth that slowly emerged wasn't just about a senseless shooting. It was about a community teetering on the brink of chaos. The key to solving the case lay with Leonard Peltier, a prominent member of AIM. But the full story, it seemed, was far from straightforward. Jack Coler and Ronald Williams weren't just names on a police report. They were real people with families, friends, and lives filled with promise. Agent Coler was 28 years old, a man of quiet resolve, dedicated to his work, and passionate about his role in law enforcement. Agent Williams, just 27, was known for his kind heart and his ability to connect with those around him. Both agents were young, just beginning to build their lives, yet their deaths would be the catalyst for one of the most controversial criminal investigations in FBI history. They were sent to Pine Ridge to serve a warrant for Jimmy Eagle, a man wanted for robbery and assault. What should have been a routine operation turned into a violent confrontation, one that would leave their families grieving, and the entire country questioning the events that led to their deaths. The morning began quietly enough, with agents Coler and Williams following up on their investigation into Jimmy Eagle. They had tracked him to the Pine Ridge Reservation, a site already fraught with political tensions. As they continued their search, they came upon a red and white Chevrolet Suburban, driven by Leonard Peltier, Norman Charles, and Joe Stuntz. What happened next unfolded in a matter of minutes. The agents attempted to stop the vehicle, but as they approached, they were ambushed. Gunfire erupted almost immediately. Coler and Williams were trapped, unable to escape. The two agents fired only a handful of shots before they were struck by a flurry of bullets. The scene was horrific. The agents' vehicles were riddled with 125 bullet holes. The gunfire lasted only a few minutes, but it left a permanent scar on everyone involved. By the time reinforcements arrived, both agents were dead. The case that followed was anything but simple. The investigation into the murders of Coler and Williams quickly revealed that they weren't killed by random criminals. This was a targeted attack, and the killers knew what they were doing. The question was, who, exactly, had pulled the trigger? In the early stages, detectives looked for forensic evidence, interviewing witnesses, and gathering clues. What they found in the aftermath was crucial. A single .223 caliber shell casing found in Agent Coler's vehicle linked the crime to a specific type of weapon, an AR-15 rifle. Investigators also found that Leonard Peltier was the only person carrying an AR-15 at the time of the murders. The investigation revealed that Peltier had been in the area, but he denied any involvement in the deaths of the agents. However, forensic evidence, including fingerprints and ballistics analysis, would soon point to him as the killer. Detective Sarah Hunter took on the challenging task of piecing together the events that led to the murders. As she spoke to witnesses, it became clear that the agents' deaths were part of a larger story, a story steeped in political unrest and violence between AIM and the local tribal government. But despite the rising tensions, the motive for the killings remained unclear. The truth seemed elusive. For Hunter, the emotional toll of the case weighed heavily. She worked tirelessly, determined to bring clarity to a situation that had already caused so much pain. Slowly, through meticulous work, the puzzle pieces began to fit together. The key piece of forensic evidence came when investigators linked the .223 caliber shell casing to an AR-15 rifle. This rifle, Peltier's weapon, matched the shell casing found in Coler's vehicle. The evidence was clear. But as the investigation unfolded, there were further complications. The case was marred by questions about the reliability of witness accounts and the challenges of collecting solid forensic evidence in the midst of a tense political environment. Still, The physical evidence provided the backbone of the case against Peltier. While much of the investigation focused on Peltier and his associates, it's important to remember the real human toll this case took. Coler and Williams were not just victims. They were family members, friends, and colleagues. Their deaths left a profound impact on the people who knew them. Witnesses to the incident also played a key role. Angie Long, visitor, who had been in the area, testified about the events that led up to the ambush. Her testimony painted a clearer picture of the scene and the moments before the shooting began. A major turning point in the investigation came when authorities discovered that Peltier's associates, including Norman Charles and Joe Stuntz, were also deeply involved in the shooting. But it was Peltier's AR-15 that had fired the fatal shots. Then, a critical moment occurred when investigators discovered that Peltier had fled to Canada, where he was eventually captured. His capture marked the beginning of a lengthy legal process. But even after his arrest, questions about his role in the deaths of Coler and Williams lingered. Was he the one who pulled the trigger, or was he just part of a larger conspiracy? In 1977, Leonard Peltier stood trial for the murders of Jack Coler and Ronald Williams. The prosecution argued that Peltier was the one who had shot the agents, presenting forensic evidence and witness testimony to support their case. Peltier's defense, however, contended that the evidence was unreliable and that he had been unfairly targeted due to his involvement with AIM. In the end, the jury convicted Peltier of first-degree murder, sentencing him to 2 consecutive life terms. The trial was controversial, with many people questioning whether justice had truly been served. The details presented here are based entirely on verified sources and factual evidence. This case has been extensively researched, and every element of the investigation, trial, and legal proceedings has been carefully reviewed to ensure accuracy. The RESMURS case is a complex example of how politics, social movements, and law enforcement can intersect in a volatile situation. It sheds light on the broader context of the American Indian movement and the deep divisions within Native American communities during the 1970s. Experts suggest that the murders were not just the result of a criminal act, but were deeply tied to the tension surrounding the AM movement, which fought against systemic oppression and mistreatment of Native Americans. This case also highlights the difficulties law enforcement faces when dealing with cases marked by political and cultural divisions. The deaths of Jack Coler and Ronald Williams were tragic and senseless. Their deaths left a void in their families, in the FBI, and in the wider community. But the story of the RESMURS case is about more than just 2 murdered agents. It's about a community at a crossroads, a nation grappling with injustice, and a legal system struggling to bring clarity to a complex situation. Reflecting on this case, we are reminded of the importance of seeking the truth, even when answers seem elusive. It's a story that forces us to question our assumptions about justice, fairness, and the consequences of political conflict. As we close the book on the RESMURS case, we encourage you to reflect on what this story tells us about justice and the search for truth. What do you think happened on that fateful day in 1975? Share your thoughts and join the conversation about this tragic and complex case.